Good morning, everyone, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Climate Governance Malaysia Roundtable series. For this morning, we have a roundtable entitled Carbon Market and Transition Credit, Harmonizing Policies for a Sustainable Future. For this roundtable, we focus on the current issues surrounding the Malaysian carbon market, particularly addressing policy harmonizations and governance across Peninsular Malaysia, Sabah, and Sarawak. A key area of discussion will be the supply-demand balance within the Malaysian carbon market and the operationalization of the Malaysia Carbon Framework. This session will also explore challenges posed by fragmented carbon market policy across the region. I'm very pleased that we have three very distinguished speakers with us this morning. First, Suhaini. Suhaini is the Senior Director, Corporate Development and Strategy for Malaysia Forest Fund. Second, we are very honored to have Encik Farid with us, the Undersecretary of the Climate Change Division and NRES. And third, Datuk Darrel Weber, the Sustainable Advisor and founder of Darrel Weber and Associates. And in this webinar series today, this morning, we hope to address three key questions. What are the key barriers to increase the participation and demand in Malaysia carbon market? Second, what steps need to be taken to address policy fragmentation in Malaysia, especially between Peninsular Malaysia, Sabah, and Sarawak? And third, how Malaysia enhance the operationalization of transition credit, which is still a very new topic within its market. And we hope to achieve some outcome as well. First is recommendation for policy harmonization within Malaysia to ensure cohesive national carbon market. Second, strategies for increasing participation and demand for carbon credit with potential solution to address market fragmentations. Third, stakeholder consensus on the operationalizations of the transition credit in Malaysia and their impact on the national carbon market. Without further ado, I'd like to pass over the floor to the moderator, Supun, the Managing Director of Control Union. The floor is yours, Supun. Thank you.
Thank you very much, SK. And good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to our session on carbon markets and transition credits, harmonizing policies for a sustainable future. I'm very happy and honored to be invited to basically moderate this session in front of three very prominent speakers in the Malaysian carbon market. We are meeting at a crucial moment for Malaysia. The National is laying down the foundations for its carbon markets through RUPIN, carbon tax design, the ETS roadmap, while we are also navigating between state and federal dynamics with bold moves such as Sabah's Climate Change Act. At the same time, ASEAN is exploring interoperability through the ASEAN Common Carbon Framework, which is pioneered through the Malaysian Carbon Market Association, and global buyers are demanding high integrity credits. Yet, fragmentation still looms between policies, between federal and state approaches, and even between nature-based and transition credit pathways. So today's discussion will test how Malaysia can move beyond the fragmented commitments towards a coherent national framework that attracts investments, safeguards integrity, and positions us as a leader in the region. Our panel brings together the perspectives of government agencies, financial strategy, and state-level innovation. We'll explore through questions: can Malaysia reconcile the federal frameworks with state-level innovation without double counting? How should transition credits be defined? We all know that this is very early stages for transition credits, not just for Malaysia, but basically around the world. But we see our neighbors like Singapore actually taking their first steps in terms of basically conducting pilots in countries like Philippines and likewise. And are they purely technology-based, or can they also integrate in nature-based solutions? And perhaps most importantly, how do we create both domestic and regional demand to make our carbon market viable? With that, let's begin hearing from our first speaker, one of the most important people in the carbon regime, and who's also spearheading the RUPIN and all the other instruments rollout. I would like to invite Chief Farid, Ahmad Farid of Ministry for Natural Resources and Environmental Sustainability, who will talk us through RUPIN, carbon tax and the ETS roadmap. Farid?
Thank you, our moderator, Mr. Supun from Council Union. First of all, I would like to thank CGM for having this session and inviting NRES to share what we are doing now with the topic of carbon market and transition credit, harmonizing policies for the sustainable future. If you look at the topic itself, harmonizing policies. So normally, if you want to harmonize the policy, you should have the policy first. Then only then you can harmonize it with the other policies, right? So first, what we are doing now actually, we developed the DPKK. It's very famous policy now that I think most of the stakeholders are aware because we always have an engagement. And this already concluded the policy DPKK. We call it DPKK, Bursa Carbon Kebangsaan or Carbon Market Policy. It's very crucial for us as this is thing we guide the development of the carbon market in Malaysia. And I believe that most of the ASEAN member states also are at the same pace of Malaysia. Maybe some of them quite advanced, but for us, when I chair the ASEAN Working Group of Climate Change, we could see that most of the ASEAN member states are quite at the same level. Maybe some of the country quite at the back of Malaysia. Some maybe they are quite advanced. Even in Indonesia, they established a new carbon market division under the Ministry of Lingkungan Hidup. So to show that I think we fulfill quite numbers of strength to look into this seriously. And I think Singapore also very actively to have this dedicated people, and they are heading by Ministry of Industry, where they are mostly dealing with the Article 6 and doing the engagement with us as well. We already signed Article 6.2 in Singapore for implement for the 6.2 to be under the MOU, and we are looking forward to sign the implementation agreement. So still in discussion, and we also signed with South Korea, and at the same time also we are also discuss this with Japan for the JCM, and we hope that we can conclude this by end of this year. So coming back to our DPKK actually provide us some guidance. Basically, first is to provide the national arrangement, and also we provide the host party participation. So I mean, if you want to participate for under UNTPC, we need to send our HPP. So we put there our positive list that we feel that it is suitable for Malaysia. So I hear today about the transition, the transition credit. So first that we are doing now actually this year actually, under the Paris Agreement also, under Article C also we also have the call that the CDM transition. So this year we are going to submit a proposal from 4 company from the CDM regime. So this is the old project that we are going to transition under the Paris Agreement creating mechanism PACM. So after this, they will be subjected to review by the secretariat, I think the supervisory bodies in UNTPC. Okay, this is part of the DPKK. So, and then you also will provide more guidance on like what are the enablers to be implemented. We also develop the marginal development cost curve, MBCC. I think some of you maybe also have looking into that. And one of it actually the domestic emission trading scheme, the ETS. Even the SINLI also under the steel roadmap, steel industry roadmap also launched by the Tengku Zafrul also highlighted that they also wanted to migrate from the carbon tax and also the ETS. This is what they want actually from the beginning, not the carbon tax, but the ETS. And this is the policy that provide the guidance basically for our climate change bill, the most awaiting grouping. So they still under the formulation. So now I also need to get my team also to finalize this with the IGC. So I need to highlight here that among others, Rupin will provide the MRV, measurement, reporting, and verification for the facility level. This is the first step. And then the carbon tax will be handled by Ministry of Finance, where the authority will send notification to those who are not so-called fortunate lah. I would say that in the emission that we feel that the emission is high, we will ask them to prepare a report. So that means they need to prepare a report and then give to the so-called VVB And then the VBB, this is not like the VBB for the carbon market. This is for the verify the report, the emission report. So after that, they send to the authority, and then if the carbon tax is in, so it's up to MOF to decide how much the carbon tax value to be charged. So on top of that also, under RUPIN also, we also provide a provision to implement the domestic emission trading scheme, where I believe that with introduction of emission trading scheme, this will enhance the carbon market. I mean the numbers of projects to be developed, because we know that with the current situation where we don't have any compliant market, so just based on the VCM, voluntary carbon market, quite difficult for the carbon market developer to sell their credit. I mean, even I think we witnessed that some challenges facing by Bursa for selling the common carbon credit, because there's no demand from the basically from the respective GLC or any company that embrace on the sustainability, because there's no push for them actually to reduce their emission. They only, maybe some of them maybe use that for their own asset, like Petronas. They buy, I think, 100,000 plus just for offsetting their vessel when they send their LNG to the few countries that need net zero for the trip. So for push this carbon market to be more, for that to be, to get carbon credit to be like, want to enhance or make it more project to be developed, of course we need some instrument. So one of it, of course, via the domestic emission scheme, where under this scheme, so the company that fall under the so-called that reach the maximum allowance that we set, so they need to do their mitigation. So we also will set some call that allowance, just like EU ETS and also other ETS implemented in around the world. So we set some target. Let's say we set 90% of the allowance, so that means if they fail to reduce this, they can also buy carbon credit, or if not, they need to pay the carbon credit. Or sorry, if they are able to reduce their emission, can buy allowance from other company and also buy carbon credit, so they're subjected to pay the penalty or carbon tax that we are going to be introduced. But this will take some time before we will start this, because normally when we started the domestic emission scheme, or even we started the carbon tax yet, it requires some time, because first we need to identify where are the company that fall under the category that need to prepare report. So, but under NRES now, we also have identified a few sectors, and this also have been highlighted under the budget, where Prime Minister already highlighted the sector that will be subjected to the carbon tax, which is iron and steel and also energy. So from this, when I meet with the steel people, we know that there are not much people are involved in this, which because we only have a few big player in terms of producing the steel from the, I think, mostly come from the blast furnace technology. So there will be a candidate at this juncture, maybe not much, maybe less than 10. But moving forward, there could be a list of projects that we now being identified. So once we already approved the RUPIN, then we have more data. And so after discussion with the many parties, and on top of that also, we are now preparing the template for the MRV actually to get ready for the carbon tax to be implemented. It's supposed to be next year, and if RUPIN approved this year, so there will be more work to be implemented, including providing all the regulation related to the MRV and also the other subsidiary that we need to use. Should I stop here, or
yeah? I think thank you very much for basically looking into the entire ecosystem of things. So we will definitely get back to you with set of questions, and I believe the audience is also having a lot of questions to be asked from the policy side. Thank you very much, Farid, for your opening statements. If audience is having any questions, please use the chat to to raise your questions, and I'll be more than happy to basically take it based on the merits and ask from the audience. Next, we turn into another very inspiring character in the carbon space. We turn to Puan Su from Malaysian Forest Fund, who will basically unpack how the REDD Plus finance framework and its instruments are taking shape in the Malaysian nature-based sector. And so these are Malaysians' own innovations in the carbon space. And she will also explain how these align with the global best practices and what is next with the possible scaling over ASEAN. Puan Su, for your opening thoughts.
Thank you, Supun. I think first and foremost, thank you CGM, thank you Bursa Malaysia and Carbon Market Association for scheduling this workshop webinar. I think this is really in time when we talk about the mainstreaming discussion on carbon market, but also taking into consideration new innovation, including transition credits. But in order to do so, I would like to share my presentation. I have only a small presentation here. Hold on. Can you see my deck?
Yeah,
all right.
We can.
Okay, maybe a bit of introduction who we are for those who have yet to know Malaysia Forest Fund. Essentially, in the biofinance study done by UNDP, the study has identified that the finance gap for Malaysia to essentially fund the biodiversity and forest conservation is about 2.1 billion. Today, we are able to raise about 700 million from government financing, federal and states, and the international financing, GEF, GCF, but that still 1.4 billion gap is remain. And having said that, the government has actually incorporated and established Malaysia Forest Fund to mobilize financing. And how do we do that? Essentially, we focus on innovative finance instrument. So our role really focus on developing standards, guidelines, procedure that could facilitate financing be channeled to forests, at the same time facilitate communications and ensure that the mechanism has verification and reporting in place to represent the country's effort in raising finance to support our forests. So having said that, nature-based solution is not just about forests. Nature-based solutions has its dual impact. When you talk about really harnessing the nature powers, nature-based solution can actually provide solutions not only on climate issues and challenges, it's also focused on people and planet. It also have some solution for adaptations and climate issues, and also involve community. I think most importantly, the core benefits in terms of biodiversity, Malaysia being the 17th megadiverse country, and nature-based solution is really the right solution for the country. So having said that, acknowledging of this dual role, the finance for nature-based solution really focus on two mechanisms, two set of goods. So which is a market mechanism where essentially involve transfer of credits or quantified GHG benefits from one party to another, or non-market mechanism, essentially acknowledging voluntary contributions for purpose of impact creation. So, and this impact can be monitored, reported, and verified using a performance standards. So having said that, to implement our mandate, we are mandated by Ministry of Natural Resources and Environmental Sustainability had actually developed two instruments, Forest Conservation Certificate, which is a non-market instrument, and Forest Carbon Offset as the market instrument. So FCC acknowledged voluntary competition from privates. Before this, the conventional financing only coming from the federal coffer. Now it allows more active participation from private sector to comes in. And FCC recognized corporate effort in conserving and protecting forests through delivering impact, either ESG impacts that support the sustainability reporting framework for corporates. So FCC support transparency, it has third-party verification, and it has tax incentive that promote upticks for corporates. Forest carbon offset, on contrary, is actually focusing on quantification of GHG. It has third-party to verify. Once being issued, FCO can be used for offsets, and FCO is built-in environmental integrity. So where are we today? We have, since the launching of FCC last May, to date, we have received about 26 applications. We have approved 9 projects that has been duly reviewed by an independent committee for the programs. And these projects ranges from not just restoring forests, but also focus on community, biodiversity, connecting fragmentation of forests, and also focus on ecotourism. So if you see the range of activity that has been endorsed and approved, actually goes beyond the common the conventional tree planting activities, because now we can monitor impact from these projects. So this project has been screened, that is impact driven, focus on biodiversity, social equity, and environmental integrity. It has layered governance and ensure that projects are credible and will be validated by third party, and any corporates that support FCC will get tax deduction up to 10%. So we had now actively promoting the FCC for funding. So we have engaged 50 companies, 11 have on board, and we are now currently in negotiation for 5 conservation agreements. So how the company can benefit from this? On top of tax deduction, they can essentially use this FCC to deliver and support their sustainability reporting framework. For example, if you're talking about public listed company, if they are observing FTSE Russell or FTSE4Good matrices, then FCC can be used to support and deliver this impact. So the second instrument is forest carbon offset. It is the national crediting system for forests. Many times I've been asked why we are building a national system when there are already existing standards in the market. Having said that, when we start or commence the development of FCO, we had actually looked into what are the actual gap on the ground when it comes to using the right instrument to generate carbon credits from the market. So we had understand that how FCO is different from the other conventional standards. It's actually designed and tailored to the national policy. And so having said that, the credit generators are not just high integrity, but is also context relevant to the beneficiary on the ground as well as Malaysia as a country. It also ensures there's no state being marginalized, and standardizing baselining is very key to ensure that risk is being managed proper. So we had actually right now facilitated 8 states to actually build the jurisdictional baseline or state level baseline for carbon, ensuring that the integrity of baseline generation is not just something that is created or manipulated. So having said that, building a crediting system without understanding a market can be useless. So linking the FCO programs with different market requirements is really key. I'm happy to share we had actually received approval from the UK PAC to assist us not to just get endorsement from ICVCM, but we are also looking to potentially register the FCO under the COSIA accreditation program. So having said that, we are trying to leverage not just domestic market, voluntary market, but we are also looking forward to link FCO to the voluntary, to the compliance market, whether it's international compliance market or domestic compliance market. So we also noticed that during the development, we understand that within this region in ASEAN and also any other part of the world, governments has actually started to build government crediting systems. So many times we receive question whether does it create fragmentation? Will it create more distinguished market or more fragmentation to the market. But we realized that actually having a domestic instrument could be also an enabler for Article 6. This is one example that is recently signed by Thailand, where this project is actually going to be transacted under Article 6, where the project is going to be jointly certified using the Thailand Verified Emission Reduction Scheme and the Japan Crediting Mechanism. I think like what Mr. Farid said, if Malaysia is already looking into negotiating IA implementation, the implementation agreements, perhaps consideration on having to have co-labeling between the two countries would not just address the buyer needs, but also address the seller needs. As a country providing credits, we want the solutions is actually addressing our gap on the ground. So having said that, this is I got it from Dr. Renard, President of MCMA. One of the things that the Market Association is currently pushing for is the ASEAN Common Carbon Framework, where it looks into potentially these different crediting schemes to work together, either acknowledging methodologies, looks into mutual recognitions, or sharing pool and resources and create linkages for compliance market possible. So having said that, that creates also an opportunity as ASEAN in the region, having more liquidity in the market. So I stop there about Malaysia Forest Fund, and I allow for later discussion, Supun. Thank you.
Thanks, Suhaini, and thanks for sharing that FCO is actually already gearing up for international recognition through ICBCM and COSIA. Very good to hear, and also thanks for touching on the ACCF. I think the entire region has a lot to do in order to basically make this a reality. But Malaysia, being the chair for ASEAN this year, is actually taking the lead in terms of making this a reality through Malaysian Carbon Market Association as well. Thanks, Su. Last but not least, we open up for Datuk Darrel Weber. I know Datuk Darrel from the time of chairing RSPO, very influential voice in the space of climate change. And with his new hats, Datuk Darrel brings Sabah's pioneering perspectives. And we're very excited to hear from him, especially with the new Climate Change Act for Sabah being rolled out following Sarawak, the other regions, its own jurisdictions with regards to carbon, and specifically looking into Sabah's role as one of Malaysia's largest carbon sinks, and hopefully to share how state-level action can basically complement national journey. Datuk Darrel, over to you.
Thanks, Supun. I'll try to share my screen right now. I've got a short presentation. I promise it will be painless. Well, I'll try to make it painless. Can you see the screen?
We can see, Dato, if it's possible, if you can. Yes, it's on full screen now.
Okay, good. So please stop me if I overrun my time, but I'm trying to put a timer myself here so I don't overrun. Okay, thank you all. Thank you, CGM. Thanks, the panelists, for allowing me this opportunity to make a short presentation. And I call it the Sabah's Climate and Carbon Governance Journey. Of course, if I talk if I talk in detail about this journey, it'll be a few hundred slides, but I'm going to boil it down to 7 or 6. The good news, we found out in 2024, after commissioning a greenhouse gas inventory work project to be done in Sabah, that we are a net carbon sink. We found out that we contribute about 36% of Malaysia's ability to sequester carbon. So that's the good news. We also found out that we have a severe lack of data. And apparently it's not unique to just Sabah. So what started out as a tedious exercise, but on working on our greenhouse gas inventory, we thought it would be tedious, but actually it wasn't only tedious. It was not tedious from the work itself, but it became hard because of the scarcity of data at the state level. Nevertheless, we used a lot of the default figures that UNFCCC has given guidance for all those who want to work on inventories. And to the best of our ability, we've come up with our own greenhouse gas inventory for Sabah. And this is the highlight. We did not realize that in our effort to calculate, our contribution to Malaysia's total emissions is actually very insignificant if you go through the 4 sectors that you look at in inventory, right? So that's our findings in 2024, and we find that by conducting this exercise, it gives us a very good fundamental, a good baseline, good understanding of where we can start thinking about a low carbon economy future. So that's where we were in 2024. Very recently, in July 2025, learning from the greenhouse gas inventory exercise that we did, Sabah produced its own laws called the Sabah Climate Change and Carbon Governance Enactment. So that was passed at the State Assembly in 2025, and basically vests the rights on managing emissions and managing carbon to the state. In this enactment, they established a council, Climate Action Council, as the highest body governing all matters related to climate action and also carbon governance. Within the Climate Action Council and within the structure, there will be a carbon governance division, which will be the place where you seek to register projects. It will be the place to look at to monitor the carbon budgets. It also will be the place where a lot of the regulatory matters will reside in. This carbon governance division will report to the Minister of Natural Resources. In the case of Sabah, it will be the Chief Minister. So that's where we are on the legislative side of things. The dilemmas we face in Sabah is this. Whilst the greenhouse gas inventory exercise provided a very good foundation for us to understand where we are in terms of a future low carbon economy, we don't really understand how our inventory will fit into the national level inventory. I think that's yet to be discovered how that works. And I think it's very important to understand how it fits and plugs into the national greenhouse gas inventory. I think, in my opinion, it makes, it depends how you look at it. Some people say it makes it more difficult. I think it adds a lot more credibility to the national level if the regions, particularly Sabah and Sarawak, can fit in their inventories to support the national greenhouse gas inventory. The other dilemma is, what is the burden that Sabah or Sarawak, other regions need to bear to support the national effort to reach net zero and all its international commitments on climate action, especially given that we already contribute 36% to Malaysia's ability to sequester carbon, and the emissions coming out from Sabah and all the other sectors is insignificant when compared to the rest of the country. So I think that's also an unknown to Sabah. How shall we shoulder? How much of the burden should we shoulder that I think deserves a lot of discussion between the region and the national government. Continuing on the dilemmas is, yes, we have a net sink. We discovered we are a net sink, but then how does this help us leapfrog into a future low carbon economy? Theoretically, the world is still trying to get to net zero. And to get to net zero, you have to sacrifice a lot of things. It's a very painful transition. Sabah is in a very fortunate place, in theory, right? Because we don't have to work towards net zero. We're already beyond net zero. So then how do we leverage this, right? In a place where the rest of the world is trying to just to get to net zero. In trying to leapfrog in the low carbon economy, how do we also, future-proof? So we don't want to abandon what's working for us already in the strategic economic sectors in Sabah. So how do we use this net sink status to future-proof all these strategic economic sectors that we currently have in Sabah? The big footprints in Sabah, of course, in terms of economy is tourism. There's the agriculture sector, in particular. How can we enable or help these sectors future-proof themselves, given that Sabah is a net sink state jurisdiction? And lastly, how can this so-called net sink status help Sabah to bring capacity to develop and implement climate adaptation plans? I am particularly concerned about adaptation plans at the state Sabah level, because actually, I don't think many people know that Sabah is indeed one of the most vulnerable regions in Malaysia when it comes to climate impacts. And we need an immense amount, as in most places around the world, there is a lot of capacity required to help implement adaptation plans. And all these adaptation plans come at a very, very significant cost, political cost, economical cost, social cost. And we need all the help we can get. So how do we leverage this so-called net sink status for Sabah to get that kind of assistance? In terms of policy recommendations, I really do feel that there needs to be a federal subnational carbon governance platform, especially when we see overlaps between the state, the various states, particularly Sabah and Sarawak, and federal government on particularly items such as Article 6 when it comes to international markets, right? There needs to be clear alignment on where the boundaries are. As I mentioned, it is in Sabah's interest to manage opportunity costs, right? There are opportunities within Malaysia and outside of Malaysia, and we need to balance all of that to help to leverage the current situation we're in. Another policy recommendation is we need to allow state-managed or region-managed inventories to feed into national reporting. I think we'll have to start slow, but we need to start thinking about this. And lastly, given that we are the most vulnerable state in Malaysia when it comes to climate impacts, and we are net sink, we hope that the national adaptation funds would help to consider this when making allocations. So at the end, I am very clear that Sabah will play a very significant role in our nation's efforts. Of course, it's our obligation to help Malaysia deliver on its climate obligations. More so, if we are very clear how it can help us offset our opportunity costs and allow Sabah to use this status of net sink to leapfrog into a low carbon economic future. Thank you very much.
Thanks, thanks, Datuk, for those finer points. Let's start the Q&A. I'll basically, when we are in a discussion like carbon markets and transition credits, we have to start with on the broader policy and governance. I would like to basically bring in Farid into the discussion. Farid, I remember I sent 10 pages of comments for Rupin when the public consultations were open. I think that's also in the interest of a lot of people who are joining in this call to understand when is Rupin is expected to be tabled in the Parliament, and also to share a bit on how explicitly will it identify the carbon rights ownership, landowners, states, private sectors, and basically on what are the registry mechanisms which is actually being planned for tracking issuance, transfers, and retirements. So we create a safer place for carbon market ecosystem in Malaysia. Chief Farid?
Thank you, Supun, for the question. Yeah, we know that there are a lot of interest on Rupin, especially on how the Rupin will be. So yeah, we took note that a lot of comment that we received during the consultation paper that we produced until end of last year until the early this year. So we have submitted this to AGC, and of course with the AGC also a lot of things that being commented. And I need to inform you that among others that are very challenging for us to convince the AGC as well on the carbon market, the ETS. So with that one, once we already managed to convince the AGC, so it happens basically because the carbon market, the information data, and also the ETS is the heart of the Rupin. Because any other climate change bill, the ultimate goal actually one if one is to get the data, and then the second is to give some power for the government to plan for reduction emission. So that's why under Rupin we have the target for mitigation and also adaptation. Mitigation we have the NDC and also net zero. So if you would like to follow Australia, they have safeguard mechanism. They divided the target among the company that reach certain emission. Not mistaken, in Australia, any company reach 100,000 ton a year. So they are subjected to this safeguard mechanism where at this current moment, not including the NDC 3.0. Under the NDC 3.0, they want to reduce 43% of the carbon emission. So they divided the target to the company, and every company they need to reduce 4.9%. So if you go back to our emission scheme, so that will be the ultimate goal that we want to aim if we want to get net zero or achieve the NDC target. This year we update our NDC, so we'll see the new target that we will unveil this figure. Now it's being circular for the comment, and hope that can be tabled to the cabinet very soon. So if you get the target, and then we should able to be just follow the other countries that divided the target among the big emitter, so that they can do their emission reduction plan. So your question about when we are going to table Rupin, so this for us is quite challenging to give to whether where we want to table. I mean, we are eyeing that this to be tabled by end of this year. So the third session of Parliament, that is our ultimate goal. But if there are anything happen to the administrative of the government, especially now we don't have the ministers, we will have the cabinet minister, Datuk Johari Ghani, and by end of this year, I was told that there will be a reshuffle. So if there are reshuffle, there will be a challenge for if you want to table the bill, because normally it takes some time for the minister to understand, but more the European is very technical bill, and also it's not easy to understand. So let's hope that we are can table this by end of this year. So all the process are still being processed by us. Especially, we also wanted to have the new entity to become the regulator for this. We hope that we have a new bill also for the IKLIM. We call it IKLIM, the Pihak Berkuasa Perbaikan Negara, PPBIN, or better known as IKLIM. There will be a new entity, just like SEDA for RE, Energy Commission for electricity regulator, SPAN for the water. So we will anticipate that we have a new entity. Hopefully, they will be approved by the government also, so that they are able to administer and so become the regulator for administer Rupin, and also to make sure that any work related to authorization can be handled by this authority.
Very nice to hear. Also to cascade into Rupin's readiness with regards to Article 6. What are the provisions which has already been in place to ensure that this is Article 6 compliance, especially around the ITMOS authorization, double entries in registries, corresponding adjustments to Malaysia's NDCs? Could you share a bit more on that as well?
Yeah. Actually, there's some provision related to Article 6 will be inside Rupin. Provision for authorization or other registration of the compliant market also will be there, except the VCM. VCM we don't regulate under this Rupin. But anything on the compliant market, they will be inside this, including the authorization of corresponding adjustment. So, but the final say will be from the AGC. But this is something that we are going to propose under Rupin.
Thank you very much. I would like to bring how federal and states alignment. I would also like to bring Darrel into the discussion. But before I would like to get a purview from the federal first. And we see with Sarawak's climate change acts, Sabah's climate change acts coming up. How will federal regulations under Rupin will synchronize states' ambitions and preventing duplication, double counting of credits across state and federal systems? Is this already in plan? Chief Farid?
Come again?
On the federal regulations from Rupin, how it synchronizes with the Sabah's and Sarawak's initiatives in basically regulating carbon as a property under the climate change, their respective climate change acts.
We understand.
And how are we preventing duplication and double counting?
We understand that currently Sarawak already passed the GEG enactment, and Sabah also have passed this. I don't know whether the other country, the other state will follow suit these two states. But for us, for us as a federal, we will normally the obligation come with the federal, so the state can harmonize with the federal on what are the regulation being imposed. Then I think we can ensure that there are no more double counting or duplication of the information, because at the end of the day, like Darrel mentioned just now, so Sabah also actually now also we are also getting the data from the Sabah state government, especially on the forest figures. So I think with the new regulation or new act, I don't think should be a problem, because Sabah also have already established the council, right? So now later on, from previously we normally with Department of Forestry of Sabah to get data. So maybe later on only the stakeholder will be changed, like maybe forest figure will be handled by the state council. State council will act as the coordinator for the state, and then we just last with the district climate council to get the data done, and then we can conclude it in our national inventory, especially when we're developing our final audit report for the upcoming one. So we resubmitted the first BUR in 2024, and we are going to have a new one by end of next year. I believe that when the state council already established, so we can collaborate further on the how to get information from the Sabah, especially on the forest figure.
Yeah, thanks. Would like to bring Dr. Darrel into the discussion. With the new enactment, it provides room for levies, royalties, state-controlled carbon rights. Which of these provisions could basically strengthen the national alignment, and which might complicate it? What are your thoughts, Dr. Darrel?
Well, there's opportunities, I think, on either side. So I think it's very clear when it comes to carbon, it's considered an asset for the state. Right? So stock is an asset for the state. Therefore, managing of anything to do with carbon is managed by the state of Sabah. Now, when it comes to levies, levies are mostly on the projects itself. And there is also opportunity for the state government of Sabah to try and give carbon budgets to sectors also, to try to see whether how, what's important for Sabah. If Sabah sees that being a net sink is a winning strategy, then they would want to manage all activities to keep that status, right? So they must be able to, so it's in a way, it's I say if it works, it will be very effective to actually help the nation to maintain its own greenhouse gas inventories, to keep it, keep the emissions low. If Sabah sees that being a net sink is a winning strategy, I think. For now, Sabah does see it as a winning strategy to leapfrog into the globe, what people say globally as a low carbon economic future. Now, in order to avoid, and I'm sure there'll be complications, because in actual fact, we have not seen, even at the state level, all of what is supposed to be tabled under RUPIN, which is our climate, the proposed climate laws for Sabah. We don't know the details completely. So therefore, we don't know where the complications could be. We can imagine, but we don't know for sure. And I think there's room for a lot more coordination and discussion, right? With regards to double counting, I think every region would want to avoid this. And already, I think if you see the Ministry of Finance, they've got the help of the World Bank, and the World Bank and the consultants have gone around engaging, and we're very grateful for that. With definitely with Sabah, and I know with Sarawak, on how to see how to avoid duplication of work or errors in reporting when it comes to the inventories and registries. So I think there's work already ongoing, and we definitely want to avoid this kind of errors.
Yeah, thanks, Dato. Man, it's for sure that only working through collaboration that we can basically achieve and reduce.
I think frank and equitable discussions is key. Yeah,
clear.
We sometimes mistake consultation for just saying, do you have any questions? I think consultations, the I in consultations, the informed consent, I think is very important, right? After consultations. And I think if the more you inform each other, the better you can reach to a better understanding. Yeah,
absolutely. Thank you very much for those thoughts. I would like to bring Puan Su into the discussion. It's very clear RUPIN is actually going to come with a carbon tax and ETS. Maybe I'll have a follow-up question for Farid afterwards. But Puan Su, could FCC and FCO units instruments being designed to qualify as compliance instruments within the ETS, or will they remain strictly in the voluntary as voluntary market instruments? What are your thoughts, and how it's being rolled out at the moment?
Thank you, Mr. Supun. I think as shared in my earlier deck, the intent for FCO market is not just for voluntary market. Hence, when we working on the development of the instrument, really the integrity requirement focus on both these market specifications. So this includes Article 6, where FCO is designed following the specification under Article 6, but at the same time, FCC is actually, we're trying to position FCC is the instrument under Article 6.8, the non-market mechanism under the Paris Agreement. So having said that, the FCO is also being developed to observe the core carbon principle, which is essential for voluntary carbon market. But the FCO is also designed to also observe the criteria requirement under the COSIA. Having said that, these principles and the core or the requirements are generally not really into specific, but it's really focused on what is considered best or high integrity for accrediting system or a standard. So having to have transparency in building the system, having to have consulted various actors and stakeholders is really key to ensure that your instrument is not just context relevant, but also observing high integrity requirements. Having safeguards in place would ensure that FCO readiness for compliance market. So we are advocating. I know we understand that the development of carbon tax and ETS still in progress, but the build up or the design architecture for FCO is really focusing not just voluntary market but also compliance market.
Thanks, Ponsu. Chief Farid, on the carbon tax side of it, how will this tax be structured? We also hear some information from Prime Minister in one of his previous speeches. What would be the rate level, sector coverage? Will it cover steel, power, cement, or will it cover more? What will be the exemptions? How will the revenues be recycled into climate funds, rebates, industrial modernization? Can you guide us a bit on how carbon tax is being designed as we speak?
Okay, actually, it's quite difficult for me to answer this, so from beginning, I already answered that for us, we only provide the MRV for carbon tax, actually. And I need to make known to all that Carbon Tax Act actually is developing by MOF themselves. So actually, I didn't know what are the mechanics of carbon tax actually, on how much actually they want to charge, and how the mechanism will like, whether they will provide the offsetting or whatsoever is still being discussed actually. Because it's under MOF, so quite difficult for me to explain further on what being drafted actually. So the only thing that I can mention that European provide only for the MRV, where based on the standing with MOF, all the reporting come from us, where for example that sustainability report and emission report for the particular years, let's say for 2036, so they need to give this to MF after endorsement by the ICLIM, so-called ICLIM. I give you the name ICLIM. So these are the scenario that could be for the carbon tax regime when this be implemented. So that so normally, if you want to have a carbon tax figures, so just like our income tax, so it will be a one year cycle. Let's say for assessment for 2036, so you need to come out the report from January to December for 2036. So that means this will only happen in 2037. This for our income tax. So normally we will do our for that e-filing for government or individual. Normally they open it on the 1st of March. So the mechanism will be just like this also. So that means if let's say you want to have the reporting for 2036, we only can have it in 2037. So the challenge is, let's say we're not able to table Rupin or carbon tax bill this year, so then you only have to table it in 2036. So that means we will have less than 1 year to produce the report for 2037, because we cannot retrospective the report, right? So we cannot start the rule before the act is being approved and also being gazetted. So let's say if the act is approved in March next year, and waiting the call that the need to be warta also lah, so by Emten Agung, approved by Emten Agung, so maybe it takes some time as well. So it could be like it's last 6 months available, maybe start from June. So that means if the government still wanted to do, then maybe the reporting will only less than 6 months. So I mean, the reporting will be 6 months only. There could be a few scenarios that could be happen. If let's say the government is not ready, so there could be a possibility that the report maybe can be extended further to 2027, and only the tax can be collected in 2028. But this is only some assumption. But anything is depend on the government and MOF itself. If the Prime Minister or maybe the Ministry of Finance wanted to collect early, then they propose some other things lah to be implemented. Now I still don't have any certain movement from what are the could be the possibility for the carbon tax in terms of like for that how the mechanic of it, the detail of it, it's not clear as of now. So these are the things that I can say as of now, because I cannot talk on behalf of MOF.
Thank you very much. Within your provisions.
Supun, if you mind if I jump in to just get a bit of clarity? Encik Farid, just in terms of sequencing, right? That means Rupiah have to come first before the carbon tax bill.
Agree, yes.
Okay, clear.
Yeah, thanks. And the organizers have actually allowed us another 15 minutes injury time for us to proceed this discussion, and also with the note that this is a topic that we can't conclude within 1 hour 15 minutes, and there will be also possibilities for further roundtables on the same topics to basically continue the discussion. So please keep your questions coming in. Would like to go back to Puan Su again on the supply and demand side of it. You have signed MOUs with basically the largest schemes which is out there, Vera, Gold Standard, and also Sekabono as well. So how will these recognitions improve the market confidence? And at the same time, Malaysia is also developing our own tools as well. And how are you looking into this, having our own tools and also having MOUs recognitions with these international schemes? What are the safeguards, and how are we basically going to prevent and ensure the high integrity of these credits will be issuing through the MFF instruments?
Thank you for the question, Supun. I must first clarify that we signed MOU on it's very high level position where parties essentially number one looks together to work collaboratively in building capacity for carbon market. Number two, it also looks into potentially having to works towards dual certifications or mutual recognition of standards, mutual recognition of methodology. So having said that, because the growing interest for government-based crediting system, I believe that the independent carbon standards are also very innovative themselves. So you see, not just they introducing and strengthen the safeguarding and the mechanisms in terms of methodologies, but also they are very open to work together with the government-based crediting system to actually strengthen the market element, including potentially leveraging on Article 6 transactions. So having said that, if you read in the news, we see that more and more standard owners are actually looking into working with the government to support delivering the high quality Article 6 credits. I'm talking about Article 6.2 because Article 6.4 will be depending on the PACM or the Paris Agreement Crediting Mechanism specifications. But Article 6.2 allows different standard being used, but at the same time, depending from the buyer and seller country willingness to use specific standards. So having said that, some countries are very strict. If I can give an example, Thailand has actually only allowed TIVA certified credits to be transacted, and they are quite open to also work with the existing crediting mechanisms, government crediting mechanisms, like what I've shared with Japan, the Japan crediting mechanism to do dual labeling. So this is also possible for a government-based crediting system to work together with the independent standards. So having said that, it build more credibility on how is it possible or not. I believe more analysis need to be done, because you are talking about the specifications within the methodologies, and you're talking about the specifications within the standards, guidelines, and process and procedures. For Indonesia, if you see, Indonesia had actually recognized gold standards to be used for Article 6 transactions as is, which means that it doesn't go for dual labeling, but they recognize the gold standard as the mechanism. Having said that, I think at this point is relatively very early for me to see what are the confirm or the certain pathway on how we collaborate, but the general idea is to build more credible and internationally aligned best practices crediting system.
Yeah, I think that's a very valid point. Looking into the demand side of it, what's the demand signals coming up for FCC and FCO? Because we saw especially there's a lot of interest from the SOEs, QAP, banks, and GLCs. Are there any commitments in place, or the demand is still tentative?
Right now, if you're talking about FCC, we already have 11 corporates on board registering interest for support for FCC, and we are now in negotiation with 5 corporates to do fundraising to support FCC projects. In the context of FCO, we had actually opened up, I think last July, we had advertised that we're looking for partnerships to pilot the FCO projects. I'm happy to share that we are able to finalize. We had essentially received 8 applications for FCO pilots, but because of the time constraint and perhaps budget constraints as well, we will only focus on first four methodology. So each one pilot for one methodology. And having said that, these are not just project developer and forest owner or land owner. These proposals are also coming from corporates. So interestingly, the FCO, the way I see it, is not just addressing the needs from supplier, but also taking into considerations the offtakes concerns and offtakes view in running the pilot project. So I'm quite positive at this point. However, we will be able to share whose are the sites very soon, which are these sites, and who are the partners. I really look forward to announce that very soon.
Thank you very much, Puan Su. Would like to go back to Datuk Darrel to understand a bit more on Sabah, what it has in store, especially looking into Sabah's transition pathways. We all know Sabah is a carbon sink with enormous amount of wealth in the forest and the natural ecosystem. Beyond NBS, what are the most realistic near-term steps for Sabah can take in energy, industry, and transport sector in the journey to decarbonization?
I think so as it is now, right, as we stand now, if we do nothing, we're okay, right? Because we're already in that sink, right? In theory. But of course, we know in the future, there'll be developmental pressures. Right? How can we maintain? If Sabah sees that the benefit of being a net sink is hugely advantageous for Sabah in a low carbon economic future, then our job would be on how to grow the economy without disrupting that status. So, we have to be careful to ensure that we don't scare away our current strategic economic players and sectors. So we have to think in terms of, instead of saying, oh, you must reduce emissions and etc., we should be talking to them and say, hey, how can we help your current activity? How can we bring better customers to you, for example, given that we are net sink in Sabah? Or how can we bring a different kind of economic activity for you, the economic actors, based on the fact that we are a net sink, right? So that's for existing economic actors. For new ones, what we hope to attract, and what I'm really hopeful, is that we use this status to attract the economies of the future. What we don't want is to have economic activities of yesterday, where high intensity, where high energy economic activities are being attracted to the state and then disrupt that position of being a net sink. Yes, we want, I think, economic growth. We all know Sabah suffers from a serious issue on poverty. We all know Sabah has an issue on having a very low GDP per capita. So we have to think harder. How can we use this current status to bring in that economic growth, but attract economies that are future-proof? Right? I think that's a challenge we have. Rather than thinking about how to transition everybody out to being net zero, I think we should be thinking about how to attract the right kind of investors, the right kind of economic activities.
Very much so. Thank you very much. We discussed at the beginning that the transition credits is actually somewhat new thing. We see certain aspects of early coal retirement with clean replacements. The trials actually happening in countries like Philippines, Indonesia, and is seen as the clearest transition credit model. That's what we can actually see. Malaysia, it was shared that we are at very early stages in discussions into this, and transition credits are generally looking into from a tech-based point of view, but it does not necessarily need to be. One last question for Suhaini. How can nature-based credits can also facilitate into this transition that takes place? How can what's the role it has to play? What can be certain examples that we can use?
Thanks, Supun. Yes, indeed, transition credit focus on technology, essentially high emitting sector, and help facilitating them to transitions to expedite their transition in a context that in a typical setup they're not commercially viable or scalable. So how NBS can actually play a complementary role in the design of transition credits? We understand that some of these, if I can give an example, if you're talking about power plant generation, the new hydropower plant generations, these will also affect some of the water catchment area or forests in specific. So having to build transition credits within a forest area can actually be blended with nature-based solutions. So that's not only reducing emission from energy transition, but at the same time are mindful on how the impact towards nature-based or the impact towards forests can actually be observed or monitor. Another potential area, if you're talking about converging the transition credit and nature-based solutions, really talking about cross subsidizations. You understand that if transition credits are able to generate revenue from the sellings of these credits, the revenue generators can actually be circulated back to support not just the transitions, but also the nature surrounding the facility. So this is relatively still at infant states. I believe we would be able to learn from our neighboring countries that are trying to really pushing for transition credits. But I have to say that any new system and mechanisms, they are subjected to integrity requirements, and having to build our very own FCO, I feel that if Malaysia wanted to focus on transition credits, really focus on the integrity requirements, what are the additionality controls and mechanisms, and what could be the potential reversal or risk within the system. So having said that, if you have the criteria on and what are the boundaries within the transition credits and build credible methodology towards quantifications of the results, we should be able to realize the opportunity.
Yeah, thanks, Sue. And we have actually come to the end of the injury time as well.
Yeah,
I believe there
Supun,
will be
maybe I have
definitely
yeah, happy to actually do some closing remarks, if I may, Supun. I think we're running out of time.
Yeah, please.
Yeah. Thanks a lot, Supun, for moderating this, and thanks to the three speakers. I think from my observations, I think there's a lot of work been done in this space, the carbon market. Mindful is very complex issues, and I think if in order to actually grow the carbon market, I think the compliance market is very important, right? I think like the climate change bill and the carbon tax, I think these have to progress forward, and also mindful that there's a lot of different stakeholders, different wish and also challenges. But I think the political will to drive this is important. I think the second is actually, I think the federal state harmonization part. I think certainly I see there's a lot of good work being done by Sabah Sarawak in terms of carbon inventory, and I think this certainly will actually help to align and progress the whole Malaysia sort of carbon inventory. And I think there's still a lot of work to get the harmonization part going. I think on the FCC side, I think especially on FCO, I think in order for it to get more credibility, I think the foundation is done. I think it's important to push forward is to get like Sue, you mentioned that the mutual recognitions, right? So that like this credit also be recognized globally, and then it can be sort of purchased by the global buyers going forward. Yeah. And I know there's quite a lot of questions actually being asked, but we don't have an opportunity to address them. I think if there's a need, I think we will actually gauge some sort of like some interest from the audience. Probably we can have a round two of this roundtable. And I really like to close here. I really like to thank all the speakers. I mean, for all the excellent work done to actually to progress all the work. It's a very complex topic on the carbon market. And also thanks Supun for moderating these sessions. Thank you very much, everyone. Back to Jatin to close. Yeah. Kindly rate the sessions, and then we are closing now. Yeah, Jatin. Thank you, everyone, for the session. Thank you.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you very much to our speaker and our moderators, and thank you all for joining today. So before you leave, we will be very grateful if you could complete a very short post-session survey so that we can receive your feedback and then improve in our future session. So all the full recording will be available on the CGM YouTube, and the slide will be shared upon speakers' confirmation. So thank you, and see you again in the next roundtable session.